One of the greatest experiences any of us can have is the experience of influence. To persuade somebody that we've got a good idea, or to persuade somebody to buy a product or consider a service. To be able to influence somebody to a way of life, a product, an idea, a company, a corporation, an enterprise. Influence is one of the greatest of life's experiences. And I would like to talk about that in this series of lectures. The chance to influence somebody else, their thinking, their future, maybe their lives, is a great experience. And all the way from being a manager to an executive to being a parent, we all have in some respects the chance and the opportunity to influence somebody else. Now the key is to develop the skills to do it. There's one thing in doing it casually, another thing in doing it haphazardly, and the other is to do it on purpose by learning the skills. And that's what I'd like to cover in this series of lectures. Gathering the skills to help influence people to a way of thinking, to a product, to an idea, to an enterprise, or just to a better life. The skills of leadership. First of all, just in preliminary, let me just give you a list of what I hope you'll find in my series of lectures this time. Here's the list. Number one, sincerity. To accomplish something, especially in lecturing and listening, we have to start with sincerity. And I would assume you're sincere or you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have made this effort and pushed past whatever you had to push past to get here. And I can appreciate that. So we first of all start with sincerity, and hopefully you'll find me sincere. I really have come by to bring value for your time and effort and consideration. But I've got a good note for you to make. Sincerity is not a test of truth. Sincerity is not a test of truth. We must not make the mistake of saying he must be right, he's so sincere. And the reason is, it's possible to be sincerely wrong. So we must not mistake sincerity for truth, because it is possible to be sincerely wrong. But hopefully you'll find me both sincere and truthful, because I wish to speak for you the truth. But you have to decide for yourself what is truth. But here's the key. Weigh sincerity on sincerity scales and weigh truth on truth scales. We don't weigh truth on sincerity scales. Next, I hope you'll find in our series two major things: ideas plus inspiration. If you want your life to change, here's the source of it all: ideas plus inspiration. Now, ideas are not that far away. In fact, I've got a good phrase for you to consider. This will serve you well for the rest of your life. Everything you need is within reach. Everything you need is within reach. The ideas you need for life change or business change is within reading reach. It's within listening reach. There's probably a library not too far from you. The problem is, right, there's a library there, but most people drive by. Very few drive in. Poor Andrew Carnegie, right, set up all these libraries across the country thinking everybody would stop by. Saying, no, everybody's going to drive by. He thought sure they were going to stop in. Do you know how many people own a library card in the United States? 3%. And guess how much they cost? Nothing. Wow. But see, it's within reach. Now, the key is, who's going to reach? There's a simple Bible phrase, and I'm an amateur on the Bible, but here's what it says. If you search, you will find. But it's very important to know that finding is reserved for the searchers. We don't find what we need, we find what we search for. Needing is not the prerequisite to getting value. You can't be a needer, you have to be a searcher. But if you'll search, if you'll try, if you'll go, if you'll listen, ideas are within reach. And ideas are life-changing. There's nothing so powerful as an idea whose time has come. A business idea, a social idea, an investment idea, a good health idea. All you need is just the refinement of an idea to make an impact on your life. Gather treasure, gather equity, gather wealth. Because it doesn't take much to make a significant difference as the time passes. You might draw a little circle. This is where you are. 10 years from now you could be here, or 10 years from now you could be here. And the difference in 10 years between here and here could be significant in money and lifestyle, treasures, equity. In 10 years, an incredible difference. But right here, a small difference in the change of discipline, the change of thinking to start you on this journey versus this journey. Now, it's also very important intellectually to know whether or not you're headed this way or this way. And once you decide, 10 years from now, I think that the gathering of my intellectual and personal and spiritual and moral and economic treasure may not be that great, the key is to start right now making these changes to walk this new road. But here's what's exciting to me. Just a few daily disciplines makes a great deal of difference in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. Just a few daily disciplines. And that's what I'd like to talk about in this series, just these few daily disciplines that make the difference, whether you wind up here or here. Good question. 10 years from now, you will surely arrive. The question is, where? We don't want to kid ourselves about where. We don't want to kid ourselves about the road we're walking. I had a day shortly after I met Mr. Schoaf called "Do Not Kid Myself Anymore" day. I don't want to go disillusioned anymore. You know, I was using the cross-finger theory back when I was 25, 24, 23. I finally decided that the cross-finger theory was not going to get me what I wanted. That isn't where the treasure lies. That I'm going to have to make sure which of these ways I'm headed. But a few reading disciplines and a few disciplines of mind and a few disciplines of activity, and you can make all the difference in the world whether you wind up here or whether you wind up here. Okay. But just a few changes. Sometimes we get the idea that we're doing about 10% and there's about 90% more that we need in order to make the difference for our fortune. And probably the opposite is true, right? We're doing enough things to have arrived here today. We're doing enough things to have bought and shared in the good life so far. And maybe all you need is that extra 5%, 10% of intellectual change, activity change, a refinement of discipline, a refinement of thought. And all we need is the ideas to make those simple changes. And the equity starts gathering in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. I have a good comment for your notes. Now's the time to fix the next 10 years. Now's the time to fix it. Now, sometimes you have to come to grips with reality and with truth. That's what was good for me when I met Mr. Schoaf. I was 25 years old. He was 44 years old. And he brought me a wealth of experience, and he started asking me the tough questions. Big question, he said. Are you reading the books that's going to take you where you want to go in the next 5 years? Excellent question. So you want to make sure. I would assume for all of you, to get where you want to be in the next 5 years, you're either reading the right books or you're not. That's kind of a brilliant statement, right? You're either engaged in the disciplines or you're not. But here's what we don't want to engage in. Disillusion, right? Hoping without acting. You know, wishing without doing. So the key is to take a look and say, where am I? What could I do to make the changes, to make sure that I can take more certain daily steps toward the treasure I want, the mental treasure, the personal treasure, the spiritual treasure, the financial treasure. I don't want to make any errors. Now's the time to adjust my daily program to take me where I want to go. So hopefully I'll have some ideas to share with you that might help make just a few adjustments. And in lecturing for especially the last 16, 18 years, I've got some letters and some personal testimonies of people that have done such remarkable things with just a few suggestions that it is worth taking the time. And that's what I'm here for. To do a little coaching. A good note for you to take. We could all use a little coaching. When you're playing the game, it's sometimes hard to see it all. And if you just take a breather, take a little time out. That's what we're doing here in this lecture series. Take a little time out. Listen to someone's experiences, which is what I want to share with you. My experiences, my ideas. And see if it might cause for you a little moment of correction so that you can make some changes that'll add up to some extra worth in the next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. So, ideas, I hope you'll find here during this series. All kinds of ideas, health ideas, enterprise ideas, living a better life ideas, and primarily for this series, skills of leadership ideas. The next key word is inspiration. Hopefully you'll find some inspiration from this series. Inspiration is a mystery, why some people are inspired and some are not. Who knows what that mystery is? Emotional vitality. Some people have this incredible zest for life and an appetite for living well and doing well, and others seem to take the ho-hum attitude, let it slide, and hopefully it'll work out anyway. I don't know what the difference of that is. But it is exciting to watch people who are inspired. But I think the key to it all is self-motivation. Self-motivation. The guy says, boy, if somebody just come by and turn me on, hey, what if they don't show up? Right? You got to have a better plan for your life. Personal inspiration, drawing emotional vitality from life and the challenge, going for it. We all admire that. Hopefully you'll find some of that as we study together. And here's what I hope you'll find also during this series. Guidelines for translating response into results. I just want to share with you some of my insights, some of my experiences. I belong to a group that does business around the world. We've discovered a lot of ways and means, and methods, and ideas. I just want to share that with you from my own experiences and hope that it will serve as guidelines. But I'd like for the guidelines to translate response into results. Now, just a personal word. I don't know where I've caught you in this particular lecture series. Maybe this is springtime for you. You've got a new opportunity going and no telling what you're going to make of it, and you're all excited. I congratulate you for that. Maybe some of you, we've caught you in harvest time. If we knew your story, we'd let you give this lecture. I'd be happy to sit down, let you translate to us your story and your experiences and your success. Maybe you're celebrating, and maybe this series of lectures I've come along has caught you celebrating. Maybe this is the summertime for you, when sometimes the going is tough, and the weeds are attacking your garden, and the bugs are after your values. Summertime is an interesting time. It's not that easy to last from spring till fall. Summer's a test, and especially when the creditors are calling. We have a tendency to walk out in the field and say, grow, crop, grow. They are on me. So I don't know, maybe we've caught you in a testing time. Maybe this is challenging time for you, the summertime. Maybe I've caught you in winter. And I'm sure we've all had some of those winter times, sort of desperate times, decision-making times. Maybe I've caught you in this series at the fork of the road, and some of the decisions you make in the immediate future are going to have everything to do with your next 5 years, 10 years. And I've been to a few of those called forks in the road. I mean, which way do you go? What do you select now as your next path of opportunity? And maybe these are trying times for you. Winter can be a source of trial when the push is on and the press is on. So I don't know where I've caught you, but whatever season I've caught you in, I want to bring you value. That's my intent. And to get the most from this series, let me give you just a quick list. Here's number one, be thankful. I think first of all, to get more, we need to just be thankful for what we already have, especially living in this unbelievable country. In America, we call somebody poor that makes $10,000 a year. I'm sure the rest of the world would find that hard to imagine. Say, why would you call somebody poor that makes $10,000? Say, I don't know, we're such a rich, fabulous country. It's unbelievable. In Bangladesh, the average income is $95 a year. So I'm sure they would find it strange that people would attend lectures on how to do better when probably we're doing better than almost anybody else in the world. I gave a lecture one weekend at our ranch in Clear Lake, California. Nice group of people. I get there a little bit before the Friday evening session, and I can't believe the parking area. Eldorados and Continentals and Mercedes and Ferraris and one Rolls Royce. Unbelievable. And I walk in, and here's this good-looking crowd. And my opening remarks were, ladies and gentlemen, I think the rest of the world would find it strange that we have all come here this weekend to try to figure out how to do better. Surely the rest of the world would say, I don't understand. The man in his Rolls Royce saying, I got to get to the seminar. Find out how to get another one of these. Incredible. But here we are, right? Probably doing well. But let's be thankful for where we are, because that's how good ideas start to flow. Thanksgiving for what you've already got. Here's what blocks the flow of all good information: cynicism. It's not that difficult to be a practiced cynic. feeling cynical about circumstances, cynical about place, cynical about opportunities, cynical about people. But if we turn that around, turn cynicism into thanksgiving, now the ideas can flow, information can flow, refinement of ideas can flow. So that's number one, be thankful. Here's number two, be eager to learn. No matter what you know, there's always some more. Another point I'd like to make is argue later with all the stuff I'm going to share with you in this series. I wish we had time to argue it all out here, but we just don't have the time. I do like that format. There's nothing like a good, powerful discussion to refine an idea. What we want is ideas that pass the test of the tough questions. And it's good to be around people who can ask the tough questions. Debate has a unique way of refining ideas that can become of value. And if we had time to argue and debate all this stuff I'm going to share with you, I would find that beneficial, but unfortunately we don't. But here's what I ask you to do. Argue with all this stuff later. Go back over your notes and relive the experience and think about what we've shared with you here. The key is to stimulate the mind, to think thoughts and to think ideas, to open up channels of information. Refinement of intellect is where the future fortune lies. But be eager to learn. And the last comment is, be a good listener, which isn't easy these days. Everybody wants our attention. Radio voices and television voices and advertising voices and political voices and social voices and religious voices and community voices and family voices. And how do you sort through all the voices and give extra time to a voice of substance? It isn't easy. But if you'll practice the art of good listening, no telling what you can find in the way of ideas that can help change your life. All right, that's enough in preliminaries. Let me just give you the 5 major pieces to the life puzzle. Somebody asked me not too long ago if somebody needed help, could you categorize where they may need help into some simple steps? And I said, I think I can. And here's what I came up with, the 5 major pieces to the life puzzle. If we all need some help, here's probably where it's going to fall, in one of these 5 pieces. And I'm sure you can guess what they are. Number 1's philosophy. Philosophy is simply what you know. Now, to correct a couple of old cliches, what you don't know will hurt you. And to correct another one, ignorance is not bliss. Boy, it's so important to have the correct philosophy. It's so important to know. Philosophy sets the course of your life. It is the major piece in the 5 major pieces of the life puzzle. This is called major. Now, some things are minor. Some things don't affect your life that much. But here are 5 areas that affect our life immensely. Philosophy is simply what you know. So it's important to know. I'm telling the kids these days, make sure you get the information while you're here. I'm talking to the Newport Harbor high school kids in some lectures last year and this year. And my encouragement is, make sure you get all the information while you're here. I know it's laborious. I know it isn't easy to read the books and take the classes and try to get good grades. But hey, while you're here, gather it all up. Right? Because there's nothing worse than being stupid, right? Being broke is bad, but being stupid is what's awful. And what's really bad is being broke and stupid, right? There's nothing much worse than that. Unless you're sick. Sick, broke, and stupid, right? We would call that the ultimate low. I don't know anything much worse than that. Well, maybe one more. Ugly, sick, broke, and stupid. So to correct all that, here's number 1. You've just got to know, because what you don't know will affect your economic future the next 3 years, 5 years. The book you miss will make a difference. Right? The information you don't get will make a difference in the legacy of your equities over the next few months, the next few years. So philosophy, this is where it all begins. Now, I've divided philosophy into 3 parts. 1 is basic, starting out philosophy. The baby starts processing information right away. Cold is bad, warm is good, hungry is awful, food is terrific. The baby starts reacting and processing information and having certain reactions to it. So our philosophy starts early, gathering information and reacting to it. Next is expanded philosophy. At least enough philosophy to be gainfully employed and offer a value to society and find your place in the marketplace. You know, be a reasonable, decent human being. Expanded philosophy. But now how do you become wealthy and powerful and sophisticated, influential and unique? Simple word, refined philosophy. The refinement of philosophy. The extra studies and the extra books and the extra classes and the extra thinking, the extra pondering, the extra give and take of testing ideas and debate and discussion. That's where the extra life comes from, is in the dimensions of refined philosophy, the extra thinking. And these are the steps of intellectual discovery that a lot of people just don't want to take, or they're too busy to take it, or it presents itself in too strong and tough a manner, these extra skills. But I'm telling you, once you start engaging in these extra skills, you won't ever want to go back. This new intellectual discovery is where the wealth is. It's where the happiness is, the good life, influence, power. Refinement of philosophy. Now, our philosophy comes from a lot of places. Let me give it to you. Number one, from teaching, the influence of others, from the books we read, from the classes we take. And you might underline the word influence. This is where a big share of our philosophy comes from. Influence. In another series, we asked 3 major questions. Who am I around? That's called big questions. Some questions are little and some are big. This is a big one. Who am I around? Question number 2, what are they doing to me? This is called major. This is called big. Where have they got me going? What have they got me reading? What have they got me thinking? What have they got me saying? And the big biggie, what have they got me becoming? Influence plays a major role in the development of our philosophy. How we think, how we speak, the formulation of ideas, the things we weigh concerning values. All of this is so important. What we know, the mind, thinking, processing ideas and information. Ideas are simply information taking form. But this whole process of mind and thinking and knowing and processing ideas and information, this is so important because it determines the major piece of the 5 pieces of the life puzzle, philosophy. Now, we do something very important with what we know. We weigh it. We put it on our mental scales and we weigh it. And I don't know, we may give it a number from 1 to 10. Probably not consciously. But if we hear something and we come into possession of some information and we give it a 10, we'll probably act on it right away. If we give it a 1, we'll probably let it slide. If it's important, we'll do something about it. If we don't think it's important, we'll probably let it go. But it's so important to evaluate. A key word we learn in leadership skill training, perception. Trying to find value in something. Where is the value? How valuable is it? How important is it? Is there something here that I can't see at first glance? Is there something below the surface? Is there something in the inner workings of it? What goes behind it? What goes beyond it? What is its origin? All of these questions that help us come to the perception of value, ideas, evaluating information. Now here's what's important, to have a good set of mental scales. What if in processing information your mental scales were off? And you weighed everything a little wrong? Do you think that would affect your life? The answer is, of course. And all you got to be is a little off for 10 years. And you can imagine what the difference is. I got a key phrase for you. Life accumulates. We either accumulate the debt or the value. We either accumulate the regret or we accumulate the equity. Now, we must all suffer one of 2 pains. The pain of discipline or the pain of regret. And I'm suggesting discipline. Mental discipline to refine ideas. Of course it's laborious and of course it's a push, but it's called small price to pay so that you won't have the regret later on. Regret weighs tons. Discipline weighs ounces. So if you accept the early ounces of discipline of thought to refine ideas and not just let major questions go by, what about society? What about the government? What about taxes? What about religion? What about life? What about capital? What about business? What about society? All of these major questions. What about my life and my value and my place and my future? And what about life? What about origin? What about destiny? What about opportunity? What about possibility? All of these major questions, to let them go casually by is to miss the treasures that your life could accumulate into in the coming months, the coming years. So this is called major. What we ponder and what we think about sets the course of our life. It's like the set of the sail that's taking us somewhere. Let me give you a good question to write down. Where are my thoughts taking me? This is a biggie question. Where are my thoughts taking me? These are some of the things you want to make sure of. You might be able to be casual about some things, but here's some things not to be casual about. My philosophy is taking me somewhere. Big question, where? The accumulation of equity will either be there or won't be there. Life accumulates. And I'm either accumulating debt that I'll be sorry for, or I'm accumulating value that I'll be happy about. Okay, philosophy. The first major piece in the 5 major pieces. Here's number 2. Attitude. Attitude's how you feel. First of all, we're affected by what we know. Second, we're affected by how we feel about what we know. The emotional part now. This is a major part of the 5 pieces. How I feel. Now, there's a lot of different ways to feel. Here's one. If this is all they pay, I'm not coming early and I'm not staying late on the job. Right? We call that one way to feel. Isn't that a selection process? If this is all they pay, I'm not coming early and I'm not staying late. We call that your choice of attitude. Now, do you think that attitude, if you kept it for the next 5 years, would greatly affect your fortunes? The answer is, of course. You cannot escape the accumulated effect of the selection of your attitude. You can't escape it. So one of the major things to check is, how do I feel? And am I on track or off track with my attitude? Now, attitude's not that easy to fix. It's not that easy to get information. It's hard to look up attitude in the yellow pages. If you could put your car in the shop and go next door and get your attitude tuned, wouldn't that be nice, right? But where do you go? How do we engage in the kind of philosophical thinking that will refine our attitude to give us a chance for future fortune rather than what will be missing in the future? So this is big, attitude. Here's another attitude. No matter what they pay, I always come early and I always stay late to invest in my own future. We call that another attitude about the same job. Now, why would one person have one attitude, another person have another attitude? We call that mysteries of the mind. Right? I don't know. Everybody has to choose for themselves. Everybody has to decide by education. Now, if you didn't know what the consequences were going to be, it could be very easy to choose the wrong attitude and not discipline yourself to the right attitude. So a big portion of our life is affected by how we feel. Let me give you just a quick list about the feelings that affect our lives. Number 1, it's how you feel about the past. Boy, it's easy to carry the past as a burden instead of as a school. It's easy to let the past overwhelm you instead of let the past instruct you. How to feel about the past hurts and the past losses and the past difficulties and the times you failed and the times it didn't work, the accumulation of all of that. How you feel about that is going to greatly affect your future in your life. One of the major things that affects your life is how you feel about the future. Our life is affected by 2 major things. One is price and the other is promise. And it's not that easy to pay the price if you can't see the promise. I think kids are having problems these days trying to pay the price because they can't see the promise. But all of us wouldn't mind paying the price if we could have a clear view of tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. If we had the high assurance with great probability of how it's going to work out, do you think we would hesitate to pay? The answer is no. But everybody hesitates to pay if the future isn't clear. So to help the kids these days, we got to do 2 things. Help them to see the promise and help them pay the price. But we can pay if we can see. My karate instructor said, Mr. Rohn, you cannot believe the incredible feeling of walking down any city street unafraid. I said, let's get on with the classes, right? Hey, I will sweat. I will put myself through the paces, right? What would we do for an extraordinary promise? Answer, the most unbelievable things. Would you crack the books? Would you burn the midnight oil? Would you engage in the extra thoughts and the extra disciplines if the promise was adequate? And the answer is, of course. But who wants to read? Who wants to burn the midnight oil? Who wants to put themselves through the paces if the promise isn't clear? Important, price and promise. Here's number 3. It's how you feel about each other. It's so important. Attitude about society, country, state and city, community, family, enterprise, office, company, corporation, division. It's so important to have a unique understanding about other human beings and what makes a good life, what constitutes a good life. How you feel about each other. I've got a good phrase for you. You can't succeed by yourself. So to have a unique, refined sense of appreciation for each other is prerequisite. It takes each other to build a society. It takes all of us to build a country, to build a nation. It takes all of us to build a community. Key phrase, you can't succeed by yourself. I gave a speech not long ago to the Rotary Club of Culver City, California, and I was unusually affected by the Pledge of Allegiance that day. Big, strong voices. It's a big, strong club. And it was going through my mind the next few days, the Pledge of Allegiance. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, what an important key document, right? The Pledge of Allegiance. And so I started writing, and I wrote a discourse on the Pledge of Allegiance. I took each key word and did a little summary for our Tape of the Month Club. Wow, the Pledge of Allegiance is unique. It starts with I and ends with all. The pledge starts with I and ends with all. It takes all of us to make any one of us successful. And a unique, refined appreciation of the all of us is what makes the I of us do much better. That appreciation of society. It takes all of us to make a market. We need each other's ideas and inspiration. And once you have that sense of appreciation of the all of us, now you and your place and your possibilities and your opportunities now start to really soar when you understand how important it is within the framework of the all of us. So you can't succeed by yourself. It's hard to find a rich hermit. Right? Now here's the big biggie. It's how you feel about yourself. That's major. Understanding self-worth is the beginning of progress. How valuable are you? What could you do if you had all the skills? If you took the extra classes and burned the midnight oil, what could you do? What true value could you become? That is one of the better exercises. What could I become in terms of value? What could I really do in the marketplace, in enterprise, family, home, love, experience, marriage, friendship? How valuable could I become? Am I valuable enough to work on what all is still not functioning in my life to full capacity? If I'm operating at 20%, what could I possibly do with the other 80%? And do I have it in knowledge and worth and value and experience? Once you start understanding this part of you, understanding how valuable you are, it is a whole new experience, understanding self-worth. So attitude plays a big, major part in how our life works out. Number 1 is philosophy. Number 2 is attitude. Number 3 is activity. Activity is what you do. So our lives, first of all, are affected by what we know. Second, our lives are affected by how we feel. Third, our lives are affected by what we do. It is so important to understand this. If you want to influence and help people, here's the key. Success is a doing. You've got to actually do it. Activity is high priority in the life process to try to get maximum benefit out of what we have available. Activity. Now, here's an important question. What is your philosophy about activity? What about hard work? What about long hours? What about full days? If you're doing something, how hard should you go at it? How much time should you put in? Everybody has to develop their philosophy about activity. Just by way of review, Let me quote you Old Testament says, 6 days activity, 1 day rest. That's called philosophy of ratio of activity. What is a good ratio of rest and activity? Old Testament says 6 days of one, 1 day of the other. You say, well, that's kind of old and outmoded. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe that's too old a philosophy. The old 6-1. I don't know. Who knows? Now, we've got it down to 5 and 2. Maybe 5 and 2 is okay. I don't know. If God would have thought of 5 and 2, he might have made it 5 and 2. Right? You can't think of everything when you're putting one of these together, I guess. Who knows? But we've all got to have a philosophy about activity. Because your philosophy of activity will affect the rest of your life. Not to think so is naive. I've got a good clue on rest. Make rest a necessity, not an objective. The reason for life is enterprise. The reason for life is productivity. The reason for life is to see what we can do with the seasons and the chances and our mind and our spirit, ourselves, to see what we can do. That's what life is all about, to see what you can do. Now, the doing, you've got to have a philosophy on how much time you're going to spend doing. And I've decided that enterprise is better than ease. If you rest too long, the weeds take the garden in the summer. So you can't rest too long. Life doesn't stand still. And the threat of life will start overwhelming the values of life if you just let it go. So we've all got to have a philosophy about activity. Let me give you one of the best I know. Here's what it says. An ancient phrase says, whatever your hands find to do, do it with all your might. That's a philosophy. You say, well, I'm getting by with half my might. Well, okay, but you've got to decide on your own personal philosophy of activity. Now, this philosophy says, do it with all your might. Do you think there's any value or virtue in that? Well, I don't know. You've got to decide. You've got to weigh this out, right? You've got to evaluate it for yourself and put it on your own mental scales, and you've got to come up with your own answers. How hard should you work? I'm teaching kids now the ant philosophy. The ant philosophy. An ancient story says everybody should study ants, especially lazy people. The ant philosophy. Let me give it to you. It's very brief. Number one, ants never quit. Good philosophy. If they're headed somewhere, you try to stop them, they'll look for another way. They'll climb over, they'll climb under, they'll climb around, they keep looking for another way. What a neat philosophy. Never quit looking for a way to get where you're supposed to go. Number two, ants think winter all summer. That's an important philosophy. You can't be so naive as to think summer all summer. You say, well, isn't it nice? You can't think nice when it's nice. We will call you naive. An ancient story says, don't build your house on the sand in the summer. Why would we be given that advice? Because it's easy to build your house on the sand in the summer, but you must not be so disillusioned. So ants are smart. They think winter all summer. In the summer, you got to think storm. You got to think rock. You can't think sand and sun. Key philosophy. Number three, ants think summer all winter. That's so important. I'm sure all winter long ants say, this won't last long, we'll soon be out here. What a neat philosophy, what a neat attitude. This won't last long, we'll soon be out of here. First warm day, the ants are out. First warm day, they're out. Now if it turns cold again, they'll dive back down, but first warm day, they're out. They can't wait to get out. What a neat philosophy, can't wait to get at it. We teach in leadership skills. Average people look forward to getting off. Successful people look forward to getting on with it. The guy doesn't want off, he wants on. And that's what starts to transform his life, into the doing, into the activity. Now here's the last of the ant philosophy. How much will an ant gather during the summer to prepare for the winter? Answer, all he possibly can. What an incredible philosophy, the all you possibly can philosophy. How much should you do? You got to come up with a philosophy of how much should you do. We're all governed by our thinking, our evaluation, what we've decided and how we feel. And this is a big question. What should you do? Shoaff gave me the best answer when I was 25 years old. Here's what he said. Do all you can. How many books should you read in the next 6 months? As many as you can fit into your schedule. Because the book you miss won't help. What if a guy missed the book, Think and Grow Rich? The guy's 40 and poor and he missed the book. He lived in the right country, but he missed the book. He was a nice guy, but he missed the book. He was very sincere, but he missed the book. He worked hard, but he missed the book. I'm telling you, if you miss the book, no telling what treasure will be missing in your life if you just miss the book. How hard should you work? The ant philosophy. The man says to me, I'm making about $50,000 a year. Isn't that enough? Now, what would be your philosophical answer to someone who says, I'm making $50,000 a year, isn't that enough? He said, my kids are doing okay, and he said, I got my bills paid. So what would you say if a guy says, I'm making $50,000 a year, isn't that enough? I said, yes, $50,000 a year is enough if it's the best you can do. We don't call enough an amount. We only call enough your best. If you're capable of making $500,000 a year and you make $50,000 a year, we call you loser. Now, it isn't the difference between $50,000 and $500,000 that's important. What's important is the full extent of your reach. That's what's important. The only way to feel maximum good about yourself is to extend yourself to the full capacity of your reach, your intellectual reach and your physical reach, and your potential and your possibility to do the best you can. What should you do? All you can. How many books should you read? As many as you can. How many skills should you learn? As many skills as you can. How many people should you touch? As many as you can. What all should you engage in? As many things as you can. Why not go to the max? I've got a good question for you. How tall will a tree grow? As tall as it can. Did you ever hear of a tree growing half as high as it could? No. Trees don't grow half. They grow all. Full. They drive their roots as deep as they can, stretch as high as they can, produce every leaf they can. Trees go to the max. Now, why would human beings settle for less than the max of their capacity? Simple answer. They have the power of choice to do so. It gives us the dignity of being human beings called the power of choice. So we've got a couple of choices. Let me give them to you. Here they are. To be all or to be part. Now, this is a philosophical discussion. You can choose to be less than you were designed to be, or you can choose to be all you were designed to be. I'm merely suggesting that you ponder what the all might do for your life in the next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. If you refined your philosophy of activity and went for it all. So the difference in value is not the amount. If you do the best you can and you make $10,000 a year, we call that enough. If you do the best you can and you make $1 million a year, we call that enough. Enough is not the difference between 10,000 and a million. Enough is simply doing the best you can. A group of psychiatrists invited me to come and lecture in Los Angeles. Not too long ago, I thought that was fascinating. I never graduated from college. But they wanted to hear my story, so I go talk to the psychiatrists. Then in the middle of my talk, I had the audacity to say, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what I think most messes with the mind. They said, what do you think most messes with the mind? I said, I think it is simply doing less than you can. Messes with the mind. It causes all kinds of psychic damage, I think. Simply being less than you can be, doing less than you could do, trying less than you could try, doing it with less enthusiasm than you could. I think it somehow damages the mind. It damages our self-image. Because here's what I've discovered happens. The minute you turn this around and start extending yourself, it isn't the value you get from extending yourself that's the greatest value. It's how you feel about yourself that's the greatest value. Because, see, it's not what we get that makes us valuable. It's what we become. And part of becoming is to see what all you can become. See what all you can do. See how much you can earn, how much you can share, how much you can start, how far you can reach, how far you can extend your influence. Now, that kind of commitment to philosophical thinking about attitude and about activity, we call this the potential for life change. The 5 major pieces to the life puzzle. We've covered 3 of them. Number 1 is philosophy. Number 2 is attitude. Number 3 is activity. Number 4, I'm sure you're ahead of me, results. Results is the name of the game. The quest of life is to see, 1, what we can become, 2, what we can accomplish. What we can become and what we can accomplish. The key to life is to become skillful enough to do rewarding things with our life. Influence, productivity, activity, results, economic, social, personal, spiritual. But results is the name of the game. It's the reason for the seasons is in the fall to see what has come from the miracle of your hand and the seed and the soil and the seasons and the rain, the changes, to cope with it all and to see what you can make out of what's available. One of the most interesting ancient stories said, a master had 3 servants and he gave them talents. Talents is simply value. Philosophy is to determine value. And once you understand that you have value, the key is to see what you can do with it. And here was the commission that the master gave his 3 servants. He gave one 5 talents, the other one 2, and the third one 1 talent. And his commission was, see what you can do with these values. And that's what life is all about. See what you can do with your mind. See what you can do with your skills. See what you can do with your hands. See what you can do with your thinking, your possibilities, your capabilities. The key is to see what you can do with it all, because results is the name of the game. And he said, I'll be gone for a while, and when I return, we'll go over the results. Here's all life expects us to do: make measurable progress in reasonable time. Now, according to the story, the master evidently was gone reasonable time. We can't ask every 5 minutes, how are you doing now? Right? That's unreasonable. And we can't wait 5 years. That'd be too late. So that's what we call reasonable time to ask, how are you doing now? What progress have you made now in this long list of human values and experiences? So the master, having been gone, evidently reasonable time, came back, got the 3 servants together and asked one of life's most important questions. How did you do? In the time that was gone, what progress did you make? What results did you show? He asked this servant who had 5 talents what happened, and that servant said, I turned 5 into 10. Those numbers, I think, are very important, 5 and 10. Do you think they have any significance? I think in higher learning they have very much significance. Now, in average learning, it probably doesn't matter. But in higher learning, we say it's very important to understand the numbers. Key life question, should we be expected to double our values in reasonable time? Answer, of course. Shouldn't we be expected to make progress? How many years do you want your child to spend in 4th grade? About 1. You say, well, if they're nice kids, would you give them 3 or 4 years? You say, no. You can't give your child 4 years to get through 4th grade. That's too much time to make such small progress. Now, wouldn't it be important to ask those same questions all of our life? See, we build those 1st grade desks so small so they won't fit at age 21. And shouldn't it be a reasonable question, what are you doing here? All this time has passed. So I think it's very important, according to the story, to go from 5 to 10 in reasonable time. Now, the master said in response to these numbers, good job, well done. And to this servant he said, what happened? That servant said, I turned 2 into 4. Now, would you find that significant, turning 2 into 4? I think it is. Key phrase, life is a numbers game. Part of life is a numbers game. How many books should you read to be adequately prepared to debate the major life issues in the next 10 years? Do you think it's important to come up with a pretty good reasonable number of books in a wide variety of subjects to be adequately prepared to debate the major life issues in the next 10 years? The answer is of course. Now, wouldn't it be important to know about what the number of those books are and what the wide range of major life topics are? This is very important stuff. This is not get-by stuff now. Right? You can get a crust of bread and a pair of shoes and stay out of the rain and do okay. But this is called higher learning for success and leadership and influence and skills that serve well for the future. So it's very important, numbers. How many pounds overweight should you be at age 50? Approximately. About none. Well, we may let you borrow 1 or 2, but 5 and we say, hey. 10 and we say, hey, hey. 15 and we say, hold it. 20 and we turn on the red lights and the sirens. You can't go beyond 20 with any reasonable amount of safety for your health and your future. So numbers are very important. When a reasonable time has passed to say, let's go over the numbers one more time to make sure we're not off track. Everything by longevity tends to drift off track. So we have to keep coming back, what we call mid-course corrections. If you're headed for the moon, the early guidance system when you first blast off doesn't serve for the whole trip. You got mid-course corrections. And they're very important when you're headed for the moon. Right. Because you can miss Kansas City and hit St. Louis and you're all right, but you can't miss the moon, right? So, results being the name of the game, when reasonable time has passed, we have got to, among reason-thinking people, to check out your numbers. Okay? And whatever these numbers may represent in skills or learning or capacity or equities of mind, 5 to 10, 2 to 4. The master said to this servant, I gave you 1 talent. What happened? That servant said, I've still got the same talent. And the story said, the master lost his cool. Or something like that. We call that proper response to lack of results. We must show that the insidious is insidious. We must show how empty life can be without measurable progress. We must get right on the problems and the challenges, lest we yield too easy to the things that can leave our lives empty instead of full and leave us with pennies instead of fortune. We must have proper response to lack of results. Jesus said to his disciples one day, does that fig tree have any figs? Is that an important life question? Does the fig tree have any figs? That's such an important life question, if it's a fig tree. His disciples said, no, sir, that tree doesn't have any figs. The story said Jesus lost his cool. One of the few times he lost his cool. We call that proper response to lack of results. Shouldn't we pour it on? Lack of results? Shouldn't we make it clear? Shouldn't we become emotional? Shouldn't we become philosophically strong and find and select powerful words that will illustrate the point? Lack of results? Right? So, I guess the moral to the story is fig trees better have figs, especially when the maker of the fig tree comes by. Results is the name of the game. I'm teaching kids now how to be rich by age 40. If you live in America with banks and capital and money and churches and sermons and libraries and books and teaching and training and classes and rallies and inspiration, shouldn't you be rich by age 40? If you're not, isn't something wrong? The word isn't right, the word's wrong. Something's wrong. Now, there's nothing wrong with the country, and there's nothing wrong with the community, and there's nothing wrong with the library and the books, and there's nothing wrong with the churches and the sermons, and there's nothing wrong with the school and the teachers, and there's nothing wrong with what's happening, and there's nothing wrong with you, but there's something wrong with your philosophy. Somebody sold you the wrong plan. Wow, it's easy to buy the wrong plan, buy the wrong philosophy, and make errors in judgment that compound into pennies instead of treasure. So, one of the major reasons for looking at results is to see what might be wrong with activity. Maybe it's activity that's producing poor results. Now, a lot of people are working hard, but they're not making much progress. Here's what we teach in leadership skills. Don't mistake movement for achievement. Boy, it's easy to get faked out by being busy. The key is not just being busy. The key is doing what? It's easy to be busy and be making figure eights instead of much progress. So, we look at results to see if there may be some difficulty with activity. Here's where we may need to go to work, activity. Because it takes activity to bring enterprise into being. There's a whole study here on activity. Activity is like birth pains. Disciplined activities like birth pains. Now, I'm short on experience here, but I'm sure the mothers in the room would tell us, it ain't easy. But see, it wasn't meant to be easy. Values were meant to be costly. The only way we can appreciate a value is by its cost. If it doesn't cost much, we probably wouldn't call it valuable. True winning is a great worth. But the price is to play with all your heart and mind. And perhaps do some losing sometimes so that when you do win, boy, the worth and the value of the winning now becomes a high appreciation. Simply because now we understand both sides of this equation, price and promise. So we take a look at activity, and as we look at results, maybe something's wrong with attitude. Maybe it's how we feel. Maybe we've been nudged off course by influence into how we think about society and how we think about taxes and government and how we think about churches and sermons and people and schooling and learning and classes and worth and value and community and ideology. Our feelings about all that. Then if the results aren't there, one of the major places to look is philosophy. Where have I missed in the refinement of my thinking? Because my thinking has brought me here. Maybe I need some changes in my thoughts, my thinking, the books, the classes, the lessons, the studies, the decision-making, errors in judgment. If I went back and corrected some errors in judgment, do you think that would affect the next 3 years? The answer is, of course. The new equity would be astounding. The new treasure would be exciting simply by making some corrections in philosophy. So we take a great deal of time to look at results, to check errors here, and errors here. All right, here's number 5, and I'm sure you've guessed already what number 5 is. Lifestyle. Lifestyle is simply how you choose to live, how you design your life. It's key to understand. Some people have learned to earn well, but they haven't learned to live well. The man studied economics, but he didn't study lifestyle. Or he's got the money now, but he doesn't have the joy. Here's what lifestyle is. Figuring ways to live uniquely. And it's a study, it's a practice, it's an art. It's as much of a skill as economics, learning to live well, finding ways to bring joy, pleasure, excitement, appreciation, and awareness of how unique life can be. It's a study, it's a practice. It doesn't come by accident. Happiness is not an accident, it's an art. Lifestyle is not an amount. Culture is not an amount. Sophistication is not an account. Sophistication is a practice. It's an art. And anybody who wishes can engage in the art of sophistication. Understanding the difference between trinkets and treasures. Lifestyle.